Joining us now, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, a Fox News contributor. Secretary, welcome back. Thank you for joining us today. I want to talk to you about this report by John Bolton, the former colleague of yours in the Trump administration, who says that there was talk of a boot for wheel and trade under the Trump administration. You were CIA director. You were Secretary of State. Certainly you would have to know about those discussions. Is that true? And why wasn't the deal made?
Shannon, great to be with you. Thanks for having me on. I don't want to talk about the private conversations that we had. Ambassador Bolton's free to say whatever he might like. But we were very focused on getting Paul Whelan out, every American back home. There was nothing in my time in service that was as joyous as returning Americans home to their family. We got 3 Americans out of North Korea. I got to fly back with them. It was remarkable. We got Pastor Brunson out. And I'm glad Brittany Griner's back home, too. They were able to accomplish this. But my mission was always to get every American back, but at the same time not create the risk that more Americans would be taken. And there is no doubt that today, not just Vladimir Putin, but all the bad guys, the Iranians, others who hold Americans in detention, see that if you take a celebrity, the chance of getting one of your bad guys back out of American control is greater. And I think for people out there of notoriety, it is more likely they will be taken hostage today, and that is not a good policy.
Is John Bolton telling the truth?
I don't want to comment on our internal discussions. We were working hard on each of the cases, including Paul Whelan's case during my time in service. We were talking with the Russians at multiple levels. Our ambassador on the ground there in Russia, John Sullivan, was working with them. There were lots of discussions about what the right mechanism forward was. But the Trump administration was always very clear. We weren't going to trade bad guys for celebrities because it creates the wrong incentives for the bad guys as we go forward. It's not good for American national security. It's not good for people who are traveling across the world.
Okay, Paul Whelan's brother, David, is speaking out. He says he's very happy for Brittany Griner and her loved ones, but their family is devastated. He says we should think about taking, quote, more law-breaking, Kremlin-connected Russians into custody. And he said, it's not like there aren't plenty of them around the world. Now, does that put us on their level if we are going to start roping in their citizens in order to facilitate these trades, or is that a fair strategy?
I can only imagine what the Whelan family is experiencing today. I pray for them. I pray for Paul to get home just as quickly as we can. But we can't engage in behaviors like there where we pull people like Brittany Griner, who may have broken some Russian law, I don't know, but who certainly didn't do anything that warranted the conviction that they brought upon her. It was pure politics, pure extortion on behalf of Vladimir Putin. We shouldn't engage in that. We should take down, bring into our custody folks like Victor Bout, who'd broken U.S. law and who put American lives at risk with his actions. But we shouldn't be engaged in the hostage-taking that we see take place around the world. We're a nation of laws. We're a nation that the Constitution governs. This matters. When we get it right, we'll not only have the moral high ground, but we'll keep more American people safe as well, Shannon.
Yeah, and there's still a lot of names and people around the world that I know that you've worked on and that this administration is working on as well. We'll keep track of those. I want to look domestically now. The House has passed the National Defense Authorization Act, and one of the key measures they insisted on, Republicans did, was repealing the vax mandate in that measure. It's got to go over to the Senate now. The Washington Post reports it this way. Rollback of COVID vaccine mandate met with furor at Pentagon. Now, the piece quotes an unnamed Navy officer. He says this makes him look like a clown. It undermines his credibility to go before his men and women and say, you got to follow me on this very unpopular command that I'm going to give you. You understand military leadership and how important that is. How do you respond to those concerns?
Shannon, look what they did with this vaccine mandate. They took this vaccine that we now know that you can't get to zero. The Chinese can't get to zero. We couldn't get to zero in our schools. And they put this burden on the American soldiers, American sailors, American airmen that didn't make sense for the forces. And it drove people who were protecting us, people who raised their right hand to go to a recruiting station, to be part of the American Armed Forces, and put it on these young men and women. It was an enormous mistake. I'm glad that the Republicans have now, it appears, managed to get this out of U.S. law. But there's a lot more to do. We should go back and fix the wrongs that were done to people who refused the vaccine previously. The military should focus on the things that matter most. They're missing recruitment goals at staggering numbers, Shannon. This is bad for America. And it's because they're foisting some of these progressive woke ideologies into our military and not focusing on the mission, which is deter the bad guys.
And there are plenty of them out there. Let's talk about China. They have been on the radar for a long time. Certainly were during your involvement in the Trump administration. They are now. President Xi, post-COVID, at least whatever version they have of post-COVID there in China, is definitely out there making the rounds. He's meeting with leaders, having conversations, Germany, Egypt. He was out in Saudi Arabia this week. The headline from Foreign Policy is, Xi's Saudi visit shows Riyadh's monogamous marriage to Washington is over. How concerned are you about him developing these relationships with places like the Saudis, which obviously we have a lot of things we could discuss with respect to their relationship with the U.S., but Xi wants to, it seems, horn in on that.
Shannon, when you won't be partners with your friends and your allies and you offend them, and you simply won't do anything to push back against your adversaries like Xi Jinping, you see exactly this kind of hedging behavior. Shannon, we, for the first time, we upended 40 years of American policy and recognized that the Chinese Communist Party was the singular greatest external threat to the United States of America. And when we did that, our friends and partners around the world joined along with us. And the Quad in Southeast Asia, our partners in Europe, all came to see it the same way. This administration came in, they went soft on China, they called the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, they said the leader was a pariah, and when you do those things, you will hurt the American people all across this country, and what you saw happen in the kingdom this week is a direct result of bad American policy. You got to stick with your friends, you got to stay with your partners, and you must push back against your adversaries, or your friends will begin to hedge. Right? They'll go make friendships to protect themselves if they can't count on America to be a good partner and friend around the world.
Well, and we have talked about how complicated that friendship is and real concerns that there are about Saudi human rights abuses. We could continue that conversation, but I want to make sure to hit a couple of domestic issues with you. You're apparently in a thing with Randi Weingarten, the president of the American Federation of Teachers. She says that you called her the most dangerous person in the world, and then writes this in the New York Post. What's truly outrageous are the other things he said, calling what educators do, quote, filth and, quote, propaganda. And in doing so, he personally insulted the nation builders of the very American democracy he claims to cherish. She says she won't debate you, but she'll invite you to come visit schools with her. Will you go?
Happy to go to a school with her. Then we should immediately head to the debate stage to share with the American people what the teachers' unions are doing to our kids. Shannon, it's disastrous. She wanted to keep the schools closed until we got to zero COVID. She said that if we didn't teach our kids, our little kids, about sex in the schools, that this was going to create a civil war in America. She's done personal attacks on me and on so many others who simply want our kids to learn to read, to write, to be creative, to think logically. We don't want to foist woke ideology into our schools. The teachers' unions have now undermined American education. I called her out for that, and we ought to have this debate. There's no need to attack me. There's no need to attack her. Let's talk about what we're going to teach our kids, why America is a great country, and we shouldn't teach in our schools that it is a racist nation. Happy to have that debate and happy to tour a school. My son went to public school. My wife is a Wichita State graduate. I'm a product of public education. I'm happy to go to a school, be with her, and then share with the American people why it is what the teachers' unions, and Randi Weingarten in particular, are doing to our kids.
Okay, so we've brokered the school visit, and if you guys want to debate afterwards, we were happy to host that as well. Okay, you tweeted this on Thursday. As I've said before, I'm tired of losing. So are most Republicans. It's past time to show voters that we're ready to lead. This comes after the loss of the Georgia Senate race that was ongoing. Who do you blame for the losses, and are you raising your hand to be the new leader of the Republicans heading into 24?
Well, I hope every conservative will want to be leading what is the grand old party, the GOP. We lost too many races. We had candidates that wouldn't defend the things that mattered most. The candidates that won were serious. They were thoughtful. They articulated a vision for taking America forward. They didn't focus on the past. They defended the things that matter most, the things about America that are worth fighting for. And when our candidates did that, they won. And when they were unable to do that, when they talked about rearward-looking ideas, they almost always lost. And I'm tired of losing. I wish we had control of the United States Senate. I wish we had a president in the White House. I'm counting on us getting both of those back in 2024, and I am certainly going to be around to do my part to try and help make sure that we get that. This isn't liberal or conservative. This is about America, and we got to get it right.
So about that, you're doing your part, or that you will be as part of 24. You visited all the right states. You've got a book out. You are speaking all around the country. When will you announce your intentions for 2024?
Oh, Shannon, I don't know. We're still thinking our way. Susan and me, my wife, are thinking our way through this, trying to figure out.
Clock is ticking.
Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but we have to make sure we get this right for America. It's not about the Pompeos. This is about getting this right for the country. We got to make sure we do that, and I'm confident that the country will get it right come 2024.
What's your timeline?
Sometime in the spring, Shannon. You'll know.
On a Sunday, right here on Fox News Sunday. All right, Mr. Secretary, thank you for